8-year-old Jasmine Bosworth tightly held onto the edges of the compact wooden fishing boat, causing her knuckles to turn white from the pressure. A light breeze gently ruffled Jasmine's pigtails as the boat swayed softly on the tranquil, smooth waters of the inlet. The ocean air was filled with a salty fragrance, and the sound of seagulls echoed over the water. Though feeling nervous, Jasmine's freckled face was adorned with a beaming, excitement-filled smile. This was the first fishing expedition for her, and she was eager to hook her initial fish. Jack, Jasmine's father, looked upon his daughter's enthusiasm with a warm smile. For more than 10 years, he had been guiding clients on fishing trips in this inlet, but this particular excursion was unique as it marked Jasmine's inaugural voyage with him. The bright sun shone high in the cloudless sky, its golden rays heating the boat and causing the water to glitter brightly. Jasmine sensed sweat forming on her forehead, but she refrained from wiping it off, afraid of missing any moment of the excitement. Jack had hand-picked this location for its reputation of having plenty of striped bass and bluefish. He had dedicated hours to preparing their equipment carefully, ensuring that Jasmine's small fishing rod and reel were functioning perfectly. He had instructed her on fishing fundamentals, so Jasmine was eager to try out her newly acquired abilities. A few minutes went by without any sound, except for the soft sound of waves hitting the boat and the far-off calls of seagulls. Jasmine focused closely on the water's surface, her hazel eyes moving quickly in search of fish. Her hands shook with excitement as she tightly held onto the rod. All of a sudden, Jasmine noticed a minor disturbance in the water a short distance from the boat. As she leaned in closer to see better, her heart raced and her pigtails swayed. Suddenly, a huge gray form emerged from the water, its strong tail causing a white froth. Jasmine screamed in terror as the 13-foot bull shark's wide-open mouth lunged towards her, its sharp teeth reflecting the sunlight. In a split second, a massive gray shape erupted from the water, its jaws wide open, revealing row upon row of razor-sharp, serrated teeth. Jasmine barely had time to register what was happening before the shark's powerful jaws clamped down on her right arm, the teeth sinking deep into her tender flesh. She let out an agonizing scream as the creature's immense strength dragged her over the side of the boat and into the churning waves. The pain was excruciating as Jasmine felt the shark's teeth tear through her flesh, ripping muscle and sinew with brutal force. She could feel the warmth of her blood mixing with the cold seawater, a nauseating sensation that made her head spin with fear and agony. Panic seized her as she realized the gravity of her situation, her mind struggling to comprehend the nightmare unfolding before her eyes. The roar of the ocean quickly swallowed the sound of her scream as she disappeared beneath the surface, her small body trapped in the shark's vice-like grip. Jack, frozen in horror, watched helplessly as his little girl was yanked from the safety of the boat, his heart pounding in his chest. Adrenaline surging, Jack leaned over the edge, desperately searching the water for any sign of his daughter. The sea had turned a deep crimson red, and he knew he had to act fast. Grabbing a harpoon, he plunged into the water, his eyes scanning the murky depths. The water around him was a chaotic swirl of blood and thrashing limbs as the shark continued its relentless attack. Jasmine's small body was trapped between the creature's powerful jaws, her face contorted in pure terror. Jack could see the fear in her eyes, and it fueled his determination to save her. With a mighty thrust, he drove the harpoon deep into the shark's flank, making the shark violently jerk and recoil in pain. The shark's jaws released their grip, and Jack quickly grabbed hold of Jasmine's limp form, dragging her towards the surface, his lungs burning from the exertion. Hauling them both back onto the boat, Jack frantically assessed the extent of Jasmine's injuries. Her right arm hung at an unnatural angle, the bone shattered and her flesh mangled beyond recognition. Blood poured from the gaping wound, staining the deck a deep, gruesome red hue, panic coursing through him. Jack grabbed a towel and pressed it firmly against the gash, desperately trying to stem the bleeding. Jasmine's eyes were wide and unfocused, her breath coming in ragged, shallow gasps. She could feel the cold sting of the salt water on her wounds, each movement sending waves of agony coursing through her battered body. He could see the life slowly draining away, realizing the urgency of getting her to a hospital quickly. With shaking hands, he started the engine and gunned the throttle, the boat rocketing across the waves. The journey seemed to last an eternity, and Jack's heart sank as he watched the color drain from Jasmine's face, her skin becoming deathly pale. Finally, the dock came into view, and Jack wasted no time in docking the boat and rushing Jasmine to the nearby hospital. The medical staff sprang into action, quickly whisking her away to the emergency room, leaving Jack pacing the waiting room, his clothes still soaked with his daughter's blood. Hours passed, each minute feeling like an eternity, until a weary-looking doctor emerged, his expression somber. Jack's heart sank as the doctor delivered the news. Jasmine's injuries were severe, and they had been forced to amputate her right arm. The shark's attack had been brutal, and the damage was extensive. As Jack sat by Jasmine's bedside, watching her pale, fragile form, his mind raced with a whirlwind of emotions. Relief that she was alive, coupled with overwhelming grief and guilt. He couldn't help but blame himself for taking her out on the open water, exposing her to the dangers of the ocean. Lucas Bennett embarked on a night diving adventure in the warm tropical waters off the coast of Hawaii, USA. It was the summer of 2023, and Lucas, a university student majoring in marine biology, was on a research trip. His objective was to study the nocturnal behavior of marine life around the coral reefs, a task that filled him with both excitement and a hint of apprehension. Lucas had always been fascinated by the ocean, its vast mysteries and colorful inhabitants captivating his imagination since he was a child. This dive was not just another academic endeavor but a personal challenge, a step closer to understanding the depths that had always been called to him. Equipped with his diving gear and a waterproof flashlight, Lucas slipped into the calm, moonlit sea from the small boat he had rented. His friend and fellow researcher, Zoe Carter, stayed on board, monitoring his progress and ready to assist if needed. The plan was simple. Lucas would explore the reef close to their anchored position, documenting his findings with a waterproof camera. As Lucas descended into the underwater world, the vibrant colors of the coral reef came alive under the beam of his flashlight. Fish of various shapes and sizes darted in and out of the coral, their scales reflecting the light in mesmerizing patterns. Lucas felt a surge of awe and respect for the delicate ecosystem surrounding him. He moved carefully, mindful of his every breath and the gentle sway of the water. His heart raced with excitement as he spotted a rare species of octopus, its tentacles gracefully moving along the seafloor. Capturing this moment with his camera, Lucas knew this dive would provide invaluable data for his research. However, the tranquility of the dive took a sudden, terrifying turn. A swift and silent shadow emerged from the depths, catching Lucas off guard. It was a shark, its sleek form cutting through the water with incredible speed. Lucas's initial fascination quickly turned to fear as the shark circled closer, its eyes reflecting a primal hunger. Watching from the boat, Zoe grew concerned as Lucas's light flickered erratically. She called out to him through their communication device, her voice laced with urgency. Lucas responded, his voice trembling, informing her of the shark's presence. The situation escalated rapidly. Lucas attempted to remain calm, recalling his training on how to deal with shark encounters. He knew sudden movements could provoke an attack, so he tried to keep still, his flashlight aimed at the shark, hoping to deter it with the light. Back on the boat, Zoe realized the gravity of the situation. She knew she had to act fast. She quickly radioed for help, providing their coordinates and explaining the emergency. Meanwhile, she prepared the rescue equipment, her mind racing with worry for her friend below. As Lucas floated in the water, the shark's movements became more aggressive, its sleek body brushing against him in a terrifying dance of predator and prey. Lucas's heart pounded in his chest, his breaths quick and shallow. He knew he was in a fight for his life, the dark waters around him suddenly feeling like a vast, inescapable prison. As the tension beneath the Hawaiian night sky escalated, Lucas Bennett found himself in a dire struggle for survival. Undeterred by his attempts to keep calm and still, the shark launched a sudden, aggressive attack. In a flash of movement, Lucas felt a sharp pain in his leg, a stark reminder of his real danger in the depths. The injury, though not life-threatening, was severe enough to hamper his ability to swim and increase the urgency of the situation manifold. Above the surface, Zoe Carter was in a state of near panic. The distress call she had sent out was a beacon of hope, but her friend's chances seemed to dim with each passing second. She paced the small boat's deck, straining her eyes in the darkness for any sign of Lucas or the rescue team. The only sounds were the gentle lap of the waves against the hull and her ragged breaths. Back underwater, Lucas knew he had to make a decision. With his leg injured and the shark still nearby, waiting passively was no longer an option. Using his remaining strength and trying to ignore the throbbing pain, he began a slow, deliberate ascent to the surface. Each movement was calculated to avoid attracting further attention from the shark, but the ascent felt agonizingly slow. Meanwhile, the rescue team, alerted by Zoe's call, was on its way. The local Coast Guard, experienced in handling such emergencies, navigated their vessel through the night waters with practiced ease. Their boat was equipped with powerful searchlights, cutting through the darkness in search of Lucas and Zoe. Zoe's relief was palpable when the searchlight beam finally swept over their boat. She waved frantically, guiding the rescue team to their location. The team worked quickly, deploying divers into the water to assist Lucas and keep the shark at bay. Lucas, now just below the surface, could see the lights from the rescue boat and felt a surge of hope. The divers reached him swiftly, assessed his condition, and provided immediate first aid for his injury. With their support, Lucas was carefully lifted onto a stretcher and brought aboard the rescue boat. The return to shore was a blur of activity. Lucas, lying on the deck, his leg bandaged, felt relief and disbelief. Zoe stayed by his side, her presence comforting in the chaos. The Coast Guard provided them with blankets and warm drinks, trying to ease the shock of their ordeal. Once on land, Lucas was taken to a local hospital for treatment. His injury, while painful, was not as severe as initially feared. He would recover, but the experience had left an indelible mark on him. The attack, the fear, and the rescue would remain vivid memories, a reminder of the unpredictable nature of the sea. As Lucas recuperated, he often found himself gazing out at the ocean, its vastness holding a new meaning. The experience had not dampened his love for marine biology, but it had taught him a profound respect for the power and unpredictability of the natural world. The Hawaiian night dive was a chapter in his life he would never forget, a story of survival under the stars. The waves gently lapped against the sides of Sophie's research vessel as she prepared for another routine dive near the secluded island of Isla Relampago. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a ghostly glow over the calm waters. Sophie stood in introspection on the side of her crew's research vessel. Sophie Dubois always dreamt of being a marine biologist. It was her childhood dream, and now that she's living her lifelong dream, she stood on the water's edge as she prepared for a dive to tag great white sharks on the Spanish coast. She looked at the ocean's beauty and admired its power and mystery. As she looked over the horizon, she felt the familiar knot in her stomach, the feeling of anticipation that accompanied each descent into the depths of the sea. Her specialized gear, equipped with sensors and cameras, was meticulously calibrated to capture the elusive moments of the ocean's apex predator's behavior. The great white sharks of these waters had become her life's work, and she developed an intimate understanding of their behavior and feeding patterns. The first rays of sunlight illuminated the surface and seemed to dance as the marine biologist submerged herself into the cool embrace of the ocean. As Sophie descended, the water started to engulf her whole being. The calm of the void felt alien from the hustle and bustle of the surface. As Sophie descended even further, the ocean revealed its secrets, and the marine biologist watched as the ocean's beauty spread before her. The vibrant coral reefs and the schools of fish all lay before her, yet her focus was on the shadows lurking in the blue expanse. The great white sharks, the subjects of her studies, as well as both her fears and fascination. Sophie's dive proceeded routinely. Everything went according to her plan until a sudden shift in the water caught her attention. But before she could react, a massive great white shark, measuring about 12 feet in length, appeared from the shadows. At first, the predator started circling the marine biologist slowly but deliberately. Sophie knew better than to turn her back from the predator. She followed the movements of the beast that was circling her as she started ascending towards the surface. Sophie prayed that the beast would lose interest and that it would not consider her a threat or prey. She slowly ascended. But before she was able to breach the surface, the shark's behavior started to become aggressive. Suddenly, the shark surged towards her. In the blink of an eye, Sophie found herself ensnared in the predator's jaws. The shark's razor-sharp teeth latched and tore through her leg with a sickening crunch. Sophie could feel the predator's teeth sinking deeper and deeper into her limb. Panic seized her as she grappled with the immense force of the great white shark. Blood clouded the water, creating a gruesome struggle between Sophie and the beast. Despite the panic creeping through her, Sophie directed her frantic energy towards fighting for her life. With desperate energy, her hands clawed at the shark's sensitive eyes, forcing it to release its grip momentarily. Taking a deep breath from her oxygen tank, she kicked free from the shark's deadly maw, leaving a trail of blood as she tried to escape. The shark's initial reaction of confusion did not deter it from preparing another attack. The beast started to circle Sophie once more. Its powerful frame was built for high-speed pursuits, and it effortlessly closed the distance. The searing pain hindered Sophie's movements in her leg, but she had no plans of giving up. She pushed forward as he tried to maintain a semblance of control. As Sophie fought for her life, the great white shark displayed calculated aggression, a characteristic of its species. Great whites are known to have a diverse diet as they hunt various prey. The great white shark honed in on Sophie, sensing vulnerability and resistance. The shark's serrated teeth, adapted for grasping and tearing large prey, latched on and left Sophie's leg in tatters. With each pass, the great white's movements became more and more deliberate. It kept on circling Sophie, exploiting the darkness that shrouded the deep. The shark's acute senses detected the metallic tang of blood, driving it further into a feeding frenzy. Despite the initial surprise, Sophie turned to her knowledge of the great white's predatory behavior. She anticipated the shark's movements while actively evading the predator's subsequent attacks. Sophie took advantage of the ocean's terrain and the contours of the labyrinthine coral formations. The shark, however, persisted, its relentless pursuit fueled by primal instincts and the scent of its prey. In a desperate bid to escape, Sophie attempted to ascend towards the surface, hoping against hope that the shark would not be able to catch up. Yet the shark displayed its dominance over the underwater domain. With a burst of speed, it caught up to Sophie as its bite latched in onto her once more, further exacerbating her already grievous injuries. Sophie was immediately sent to a world of hurt. She was already battered and bleeding when her crew noticed the underwater struggle. The once pristine and clear waters are now tainted in a murky concoction of salt water and blood. The crew's initial reaction was shock, followed by a burst of frantic energy to rescue their colleague. Sophie fought with all that she had, and she kept punching and clawing at the shark whenever it got close. But the predator was not ready to let go of its prey. It thrashed around repeatedly, dragging its helpless victim with every movement. Sophie, despite feeling every bit of her flesh being shredded by the shark's deadly maw, struggled to fight for her life. With desperation and primal will to survive, Sophie flailed and punched at the rampaging beast. In a stroke of luck, one of Sophie's punches landed on the shark's sensitive snout. The shark recoiled in pain once more, giving Sophie a brief reprieve. That's all Sophie needed. As soon as the shark released its bite, Sophie kicked the shark on its snout with all her might. The shark retreated into the depths. Sophie was unsure if the beast already retreated or if it was just biding its time, preparing for another attack. With such uncertainty, Sophie kicked as hard as she could, disregarding the excruciating pain in her mangled leg. It was a slow and painful journey, but Sophie pushed on. She was already near the surface when she rendezvoused with her crew, who were frantically trying to get to her. With urgency and panic, the crew assisted Sophie to the surface. As they pulled Sophie aboard the ship, her wetsuit clung to her in tatters. The extent of the injuries inflicted by the great white shark became apparent. Once on deck, the crew administered first aid procedures, while some immediately radioed for emergency medical assistance. After a few hours, the ship docked in, and the injured marine biologist was immediately rushed to the nearest medical facility. The hospital staff administered the needed medical procedures. Sophie was under the knife for more than 6 hours. When the doctor exited the emergency room, he announced to the waiting family and friends that the operation was successful. But it was not until 3 days before Sophie opened her eyes. She looked at her leg and saw a stump where her leg used to be. She looked around and saw her family and friends inside the room. She welled with tears, not because she felt sorrow, but because she felt thankful for the gift of life. She was thankful to have survived the harrowing attack by the great white shark that almost claimed her life. In the heart of Hawaii, on a secluded beach known only to a few, Nicole White decided to experience something that she had never dared before. The year was 2005, and Nicole, a young woman with an adventurous spirit, was under the spell of the full moon's brilliance, casting a silver glow over the calm sea. Nicole had always been fascinated by the ocean's majesty and mystery. On this particular night, she felt a deep connection with the natural world, compelling her to embrace its beauty in the most natural way possible, going skinny dipping. The idea was both thrilling and liberating. After ensuring she was alone, Nicole left her clothes by the shore and stepped into the water, her skin tingling as the calm waves enveloped her. The water was as clear as crystal, and the moon's reflection danced on the surface, surrounding Nicole with a celestial aura. She swam further away from the shore, reveling in weightlessness and freedom. The only sounds were the gentle lapping of the waves against her skin and the distant call of nocturnal birds. For a moment, Nicole felt like she was part of the ocean, a creature of the night basking in the moon's glow. However, the moment's serenity was shattered when Nicole felt a sudden sharp tug on her leg. Panic surged as she realized she was not alone in the water. A shadowy figure, sleek and powerful, circled her. A shark drawn to the moon's reflection on the water and the silhouette of Nicole's figure against the lunar light. Nicole's heart raced as she struggled to keep her head above water, her mind racing for a way to escape. She remembered reading that sharks were more curious than aggressive, and that panic would only provoke them further. Fighting against her instinct to thrash and scream, Nicole remained as still as possible, hoping the shark would lose interest. But the shark, perhaps mistaking her for prey or intrigued by her presence, continued to circle closer. Nicole knew she had to act. With all the strength she could muster, she began to slowly and deliberately swim back towards the shore, making minimal splashes to avoid attracting more attention. As the shore approached, Nicole's fear intensified. Each stroke felt like an eternity, and the shark's presence loomed large behind her. When she thought she wouldn't make it, her feet brushed against the sandy bottom. With a final burst of energy, she propelled herself forward and stumbled out of the water, collapsing on the beach. Breathing heavily, Nicole looked back at the ocean, the beauty of the moonlit waters now tainted by her harrowing experience. She realized how quickly the line between beauty and danger could blur in nature. As she wrapped herself in her clothes, shivering not just from the cold, but also from the adrenaline and shock, Nicole knew that this experience would change her forever. Little did she know her ordeal would lead her down a path she never expected, transforming her appreciation for life and the ocean into a cause she would passionately advocate for. The shark, the moonlit swim, and the fear she overcame would become the catalyst for a new chapter in Nicole's life, one where she would dedicate herself to promoting shark awareness and ocean safety. But for now, as she sat on the beach watching the moon's reflection shimmering on the water's surface, Nicole White was just grateful to be alive, her heart beating in rhythm with the waves that had nearly claimed her life. In the weeks following the shark encounter, Nicole began extensively researching sharks and ocean safety. She was surprised to learn that sharks were often misunderstood creatures, more threatened by humans than a threat to them. The realization that fear had clouded her understanding of these majestic beings during her moonlit swim fueled Nicole's desire to advocate for shark conservation and educate others about the importance of coexisting peacefully with marine life. Nicole White transformed her newfound passion into action. She started by volunteering with local ocean conservation organizations, dedicating her weekends to beach cleanups and educational programs for children. She found joy in teaching kids about the ocean's wonders, hoping to instill a sense of stewardship and respect for marine life from a young age. Her efforts continued. Nicole took to social media to share her story, not as a tale of a victim, but as a testimony to the beauty and fragility of marine ecosystems. Her posts, filled with stunning photographs and captivating stories about the ocean, quickly garnered attention. People were drawn to her genuine passion and her ability to speak about her experience without bitterness or fear. As her following grew, Nicole organized community events to raise awareness about shark conservation and ocean safety. She collaborated with local lifeguards to conduct workshops on how to enjoy the ocean safely, including recognizing marine life, understanding ocean currents, and learning what to do in the unlikely event of a shark encounter. Nicole's advocacy was noticed. Within a year, she had become a recognized figure in the community, leading to invitations to speak at schools, community centers, and even regional conferences on marine conservation. Her message was clear. Understanding and respecting the ocean and its inhabitants were crucial to human safety and preserving marine ecosystems. However, the most significant change was in Nicole herself. The woman who had once sought the thrill of a moonlit swim in the ocean had evolved into a guardian of its mysteries and a voice for its most misunderstood creatures. She found strength in her survival, not because she had escaped the jaws of a shark, but because the experience had unveiled a path she was meant to follow, a path of advocacy, education, and conservation. The shark that had once symbolized Nicole's greatest fear had become a symbol of her life's purpose. As she stood on the same beach where her journey began, watching another full moon cast its silver light over the sea, Nicole felt a deep connection to the ocean and the cycle of life itself. The peril under the moon had brought her to this moment, to a life dedicated to protecting those silent, shadowy figures beneath the waves, ensuring that future generations could also experience the wonder and beauty of the ocean safely and with respect. Nicole White's story of moonlit peril had come full circle from a night of fear to a lifetime of advocacy. As the waves whispered secrets only the moon could understand, she knew this was only the beginning. The ocean was Rachel Harris's turf, a vast expanse where she felt both at home and on edge. As a seasoned deep-sea diver and underwater photographer, she lived for the moments when her lens captured the mysterious beauty hidden beneath the waves. Coral formations that swayed with the tide, elusive sea creatures playing hide-and-seek, and the mesmerizing dance of light in the ocean's depths. On this particular day, the sea was calm and serene, its surface reflecting the endless blue sky. It was another day in the office for Rachel. As she descended into the depths of the ocean, her camera gripped firmly in her hand, the rhythmic hum of her breathing the only audible sound in the silent world below. The clicks of her camera echoed like a siren's call into the vastness of the ocean. The descent was gradual, the water growing darker as she descended into the heart of the sea. Rays of sunlight pierced through the surface, creating beautiful patterns that danced on the ocean floor. The first hints of marine life appeared. Schools of sardines darting through the water, their scales reflecting the ambient light. As Rachel ventured deeper, the pressure increased, the weight of the ocean pressing against her like an invisible force. The clicks of her camera continued, capturing the evolving underwater landscape. Strange and otherworldly creatures emerged from the shadows, bioluminescent organisms that glowed like tiny stars, their light casting an eerie glow in the deep. As Rachel focused on her work, a shadow materialized from the depths, a 12-foot tiger shark, its distinctive stripes a stark contrast against the azure backdrop. The diver, with her years of experience and knowledge of the deep, knew of these predators' voracious appetite. Rachel knew better than to linger and be considered as prey for a hungry tiger shark, so she slowly backed away and started ascending. But it was already too late to mount an escape. The shark started to react to her movements. It's as if the shark started to recognize her as prey. With frantic energy, Rachel sped her movement toward the surface. Survival became her focus. The shark circled, its movements both graceful and menacing, a silent predator in pursuit. Adrenaline surged through Rachel's veins, her heart pounding in sync with the underwater currents. She recalled her father's words, a childhood mantra etched into her mind. She could almost hear her father's whispers telling her that the ocean favors those who fight for survival. Despite the increasing pressure and depleting oxygen, Rachel raced towards the surface, towards her survival. But the shark closed in, its jaws snapping shut around her, the force crushing the weight of her lead vest against her chest. Pain radiated through her body despite the protection offered by the lead vest, the shark's powerful bite and serrated teeth, threatening to challenge the integrity of her only line of defense. In the darkness, Rachel thrashed and flailed defiantly. Her fingers, cold and trembling, found the shark's eye, a desperate primal act of survival. The predator recoiled as the sea turned crimson as Rachel's wounds bled. The struggle ensued with brutal intensity. Blurred vision, stinging wounds, and a relentless push against the crushing pressure. The tiger shark lunged again, teeth grazing her leg. Rachel's survival instinct prevailed. She gouged once more, this time deeper into the shark's gills. The attack on its gills seemed to have more effect on the shark. As it became disoriented, it thrashed in the water even more. Its powerful tail stirred up sediment, creating a swirling cloud of debris. Rachel fought to maintain her bearings as the currents became unpredictable. The relentless assault from the shark continued. Each moment was a test of her strength and resilience. As Rachel grappled with the predator, a surge of panic threatened to overwhelm her. The taste of salt mixed with the metallic tang of blood surrounded her, a reminder of the life and death struggle in which she was ensnared. With each passing second, Rachel's oxygen supply dwindled. The desperate need for air added a layer of urgency to the fight. The shark, relentless in its pursuit, circled back for another attack. Its teeth grazed her shoulder, leaving a trail of torn flesh in their wake. Amidst the ensuing chaos, Rachel's survival instincts kicked into overdrive. Drawing on reserves of strength she never knew she possessed, she summoned the last shreds of energy to fend off the relentless predator. The shark's movements became more erratic, a combination of pain and disorientation affecting its once pristine hunting instincts. Yet Rachel's ordeal was far from over. The crushing pressure of the deep sea pressed against her, threatening to squeeze the life from her battered body. The wounded shark, driven by a mix of instinct and desperation, lunged once more, but it missed the mark. The stroke of luck gave Rachel a chance to escape. The sudden freedom allowed her to propel herself upward, away from the clutches of the wounded predator. As Rachel ascended, the ocean seemed to release its grip, the pressure relenting with each passing meter. The wounded shark, disoriented and battered, retreated into the depths, disappearing into its vast expanse. The swirling sediment settled, revealing the aftermath of the fierce battle. Battered but alive, Rachel emerged from the depths, gasping for breath as the surface of the ocean welcomed her back. As Rachel floated in the open sea, the sunlit surface providing a stark contrast to the dark depths below, the realization of her survival slowly sank in. Her battered body bore the scars of the encounter, a reminder of the fierce struggle against the relentless predator. The sun was dipping low on the horizon, casting a golden glow over the waves lapping at the Californian beach. 22-year-old Dylan paddled his surfboard past the crashing whitewash, eager to catch one last ride before calling it a day. It had been a productive session with several clean walls and a couple of decent barrels. He was ready to head in, his arms aching from the relentless paddling. As he sat on his board scanning the lineup for any last rideable set waves, a dark shape caught the corner of his eye. Turning his head, he spotted a large silhouette gliding through the water about 50 yards away. Dylan's heart raced. It was unmistakably a great white shark, its massive size and distinct torpedo-shaped body clearly visible as it cruised the shallow waters. The young surfer froze, his muscles tense. Thoughts raced through his mind. Stay calm, stay still. Don't splash around. He'd heard the advice 1,000 times, but nothing could have prepared him for the reality of being in such proximity to one of the ocean's apex predators. The shark continued its leisurely patrol, oblivious to Dylan's presence. Deciding to make a slow, calculated escape, he gently began to paddle his board backward, keeping his movements smooth and measured. Just as he was about to turn and head for shore, a massive impact sent him flying off his board. Time seemed to slow as Dylan found himself submerged in the churning water, coming face to face with the great white. Its jaws were open wide, rows of razor-sharp teeth glistening as it lunged towards him. Instinctively, Dylan raised his arms to protect his head, feeling the creature's powerful jaws clamp down on his right forearm. Searing pain shot through his body as the shark thrashed violently, tearing into his flesh. Dylan let out a muffled scream, bubbles escaping his mouth as he struggled to break free. He could feel the bone in his arm beginning to crack under the immense pressure. Summoning every ounce of strength, he managed to land a few heavy blows to the side of the shark's head. The creature released its grip but quickly went in for another attack. This time, its massive jaws clamped down on Dylan's left thigh, ripping through muscle and tendon. The pain was excruciating, but Dylan refused to give in. He continued to strike the shark, his fists pummeling its sensitive snout. After what felt like an eternity, the great white finally broke off the assault and retreated into the murky depths. Dazed and bleeding heavily, Dylan struggled to stay afloat. He could feel the warm blood gushing from his wounds, the seawater stinging the raw, exposed flesh. Desperately, he began to paddle towards the shore, leaving a trail of crimson in his wake. Onlookers on the beach watched in horror as the injured surfer fought to reach the safety of land. Several bystanders immediately called emergency services, while others raced into the water to try and assist Dylan. By the time he finally collapsed onto the sand, Dylan was barely conscious. Paramedics rushed to his aid, quickly assessing the extent of his injuries. His right arm hung limply, the bone visible through the shredded skin and muscle. His left leg was a mangled mess, the shark's powerful jaws having ripped away a significant portion of flesh and muscle. The medical team worked quickly to stem the bleeding and stabilize Dylan before rushing him to the nearest hospital. Along the way, he drifted in and out of consciousness, the memory of the attack playing over and over in his mind. In the emergency room, the doctors fought to save Dylan's severely damaged limbs. After several hours of intense surgery, they were able to repair the worst of the injuries, though it was clear he faced a long and difficult road to recovery. When Dylan finally awoke, groggy from the anesthesia, the reality of what had happened hit him hard. The pain was excruciating, and he let out an anguished cry upon seeing the extent of the damage to his arm and leg. In the days that followed, Dylan's condition slowly improved, though the physical and psychological trauma of the attack weighed heavily on him. He was racked with nightmares, the image of the shark's gaping jaws forever seared into his memory. It was during one of his physical therapy sessions that Dylan met Emily, a marine biologist who had been following the case closely. She had come to the hospital to offer her support and expertise, hoping to assist in Dylan's recovery process. Initially, Dylan was wary of the stranger, but as Emily shared her deep passion for shark conservation, he found himself captivated. She explained how great whites, despite their fearsome reputation, played a vital role in the delicate balance of marine ecosystems. Dylan listened intently, his perspective slowly shifting as he began to see the sharks in a new light. Over the following weeks, Emily visited Dylan regularly, offering encouragement and guidance as he navigated his rehabilitation. Their conversations delved deeper, touching on the complex relationship between humans and the ocean's apex predators. Dylan, once terrified of the creature that had nearly taken his life, now found himself fascinated by these magnificent animals. As his recovery progressed, Dylan's determination to make a difference grew. With Emily's support, he began to volunteer at the local aquarium, educating visitors about the importance of shark conservation. He also started speaking out against the sensationalized media coverage that often fueled irrational fear and hatred towards these misunderstood creatures. It was a long and arduous journey, but Dylan's passion for the cause only deepened with time. He underwent numerous surgeries and physical therapy sessions, slowly regaining the use of his injured limbs. Though he would forever bear the scars of the attack, both physical and emotional, Dylan found a newfound sense of purpose. Years later, Dylan stood on the very same beach where the attack had occurred, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Next to him, Emily smiled, her hand intertwined with his. Together they watched as a great white shark gracefully breached the surface, a testament to the power and beauty of these magnificent predators. In 2000, in the expansive and vibrant waters of the Great Barrier Reef, Australia, Kevin Gilbert dedicated his life to unraveling the mysteries of the ocean's most misunderstood inhabitants, sharks. Kevin, a respected shark researcher, was trying to study shark behavior to shed light on their complex lives and reduce the stigma surrounding these majestic creatures. Equipped with cutting-edge technology and years of experience, Kevin embarked on a routine expedition to track a particular shark he had tagged months earlier. Due to her luminous white underbelly, this shark, a formidable great white named Luna, had shown unusual patterns that intrigued Kevin. He believed that understanding Luna's behavior could provide critical insights into sharks' social dynamics, potentially revolutionizing how humans coexist with these apex predators. The clear blue skies and calm seas of the Great Barrier Reef provided the perfect conditions for Kevin's research. Aboard a small, sturdy boat, he set out into the open water, his heart filled with the familiar thrill of discovery. His equipment beeped steadily, indicating Luna's proximity. Kevin's eyes scanned the water, searching for a sign of the magnificent creature he had come to know so well through his studies. As he leaned over the side of the boat, Kevin finally spotted Luna's shadow gliding through the water. Her movements graceful yet powerful. He marveled at her beauty and strength, a living testament to nature's perfection. Kevin documented every detail with his camera, hoping to capture something new about her behavior. Suddenly, Luna's trajectory changed. She turned sharply, coming towards the boat at an unexpected speed. Kevin, caught off guard by her sudden interest, stood frozen, the camera still poised. He had observed hundreds of sharks in his career, yet he had never seen one charge like this. Kevin's admiration for Luna transformed into a fight for survival in the following moments. Luna collided with the boat with such force that Kevin lost his balance and fell into the water, his camera slipping from his grasp and sinking into the depths. In the water, face to face with Luna, Kevin's expertise as a researcher was his only defense. He knew that panic would only provoke her further. He remained as calm as possible, making minimal movements to avoid triggering Luna's predatory instincts. Luna circled Kevin, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity he had never seen. Then, with a speed that took his breath away, she lunged. Kevin felt the pressure of her jaws clamps down on his leg, the neoprene fabric of his wetsuit offering some protection, but not enough to prevent injury. Drawing on his years of experience, Kevin employed a defense technique he had learned but had yet to use, pushing forcefully against Luna's nose. Surprised by the resistance, the shark released him and disappeared into the blue. Kevin assessed his injuries back on the boat with the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. They were minor, but the encounter had left a significant mark on his psyche. He realized how close he had come to a different outcome, and how his perception of shark behavior had been challenged in the most direct way possible. Kevin's encounter with Luna under the brilliant Australian sun would not deter him from his research. Instead, it would deepen his understanding of shark behavior and aggression. But as he returned to shore, his mind raced with questions and possibilities. This close call was not just a story of survival. It was a pivotal moment that would inspire Kevin to rethink how shark research was conducted, prioritizing safety and a more profound respect for these complex creatures. His mission had always been to bridge the gap between humans and sharks, to replace fear with knowledge. Now, more than ever, Kevin felt compelled to use his experience to advocate for safer research practices and a new approach to studying sharks in the wild. The journey ahead would be challenging, but Kevin Gilbert was ready to lead the charge, driven by a newfound resolve from his close call in the waters of the Great Barrier Reef. Determined to turn his experience into a catalyst for change, Kevin meticulously analyzed every second of the encounter. He pored over the data collected from Luna's tag, the video footage from his camera before it sank, and his recollections of the event. His goal was clear: to develop a new framework for shark research that prioritized the safety of both the researchers and the sharks. Kevin knew that the aggressive behavior displayed by Luna was out of character for sharks, and believed that stressors in their environment, possibly even research practices themselves, could trigger such responses. With his findings, Kevin set out to share his insights with the broader scientific community. He drafted a comprehensive paper detailing his encounter analysis and proposed new guidelines for conducting shark research. These guidelines emphasize the importance of minimizing stress and disturbance to sharks, using non-invasive tracking technologies, and adopting defensive measures for researchers without harming the animals. Kevin's paper sparked a significant conversation within the marine biology community. Presented at a major marine conservation conference, his story and insights challenged long-held practices and opened the door to a new era of ethical shark research. Kevin proposed using drones for aerial observation of sharks, reducing direct human interaction, and implementing more sophisticated tagging methods that were less invasive and more informative. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Kevin's experience and proactive approach to reform inspired researchers worldwide to reconsider their methodologies. Based on Kevin's suggestions, funding was allocated to develop new technologies, and workshops and training programs were established to teach researchers the safer practices Kevin advocated for. However, Kevin's encounter with Luna had an impact beyond the scientific community. His story, featured in documentaries and news articles, raised public awareness about the complexity of shark behavior and the importance of conserving marine ecosystems. People began to see sharks not as mindless predators but as essential components of the ocean's delicate balance, deserving of respect and protection. Kevin's close call marked a new chapter in human interaction with sharks. It led to safer research practices that respected the animal's well-being and fostered a greater understanding of their role in the ocean. Kevin Gilbert, once a researcher known for his dedication to shark behavior studies, had become a leading voice in the ethical wildlife research and conservation movement. Kevin felt a profound connection to the ocean and its inhabitants as he watched the sun set over the Great Barrier Reef from his lab. He knew the path ahead was long and fraught with challenges, but he was committed to making a difference. With each day, each study, and each advocacy effort, he was helping to create a world where humans and sharks could coexist in harmony and mutual respect. Kevin Gilbert had survived a close call, but more importantly, he had seized it as an opportunity to advocate for a better, safer future for sharks and the people studying them. Under Isla Azul's setting sun, Ben Reynolds prepared for an adventure. Standing on the shore, the ocean's vastness stretched before him. While he stood there adjusting his diving gear, he felt the anticipation that accompanied the thrill of diving in the depths along the Pacific coastline. The boat, with a scent of salt and sea, bobbed in calm waters. Crew chatter, clinking gear, and the hum of anticipation filled the deck. Ben's colleagues and support system shared the thrill of diving into the cold embrace of the ocean. Seagull calls echoed, marking the departure of the ship. Ben's fingers traced his camera, lost in thought of what lay ahead. The boat's engines roared, slicing through the ocean. The journey had begun, excitement surging with the promise of the adventure. The boat anchored at the chosen site as Ben donned his wetsuit. The snug embrace of neoprene felt like a shield against the harsh elements of the sea. His diving mask fogged momentarily as he adjusted it over his face. With a final check of his equipment, Ben stood at the edge of the boat, ready to take the plunge. A splash echoed as Ben descended into the cool embrace of the ocean. The transition from air to water was a baptism of sorts, marking the beginning of communion with a world both familiar and alien. The sea greeted him with a concoction of amazing sights and sounds: the gentle sway of seaweed, the intricate dance of darting fish, and the timeless rhythm of the ocean currents. As he descended further into the depths, the sunlight filtered through the water, creating a mesmerizing play of dappled rays. Ben's camera clicked, capturing every moment. The corals swaying in a silent dance, schools of fish moving with synchronized grace, and the ever-shifting palette of colors of different undersea creatures. However, amidst this underwater paradise, a subtle unease began to coil in the pit of Ben's stomach. An awareness tinged with caution surfaced, a primal instinct that warned of an unseen presence in the hidden depths. He glanced over his shoulder, his eyes scanning the undulating blue canvas for any sign of danger. And then it happened. As Ben continued to capture the beauty around him, his camera clicked, echoing like a hymn to the ocean, and a shadow emerged from the depths. Silent and stealthy, it materialized a dark form that sliced through the water with predatory grace. The shadow revealed itself, a tiger shark, its majestic stripes a stark contrast against the ocean. Panic surged through Ben as the reality of the situation dawned on him. Despite the predatory nature of these creatures, Ben knew that they were not mindless killers. They were essential to the reef's health. Survival instincts kicked in as he kicked hard, swimming away from the circling predators. The sharks closed in, their sharp teeth inches from his flippers. Amid the chase, Ben spotted a narrow crevice in the coral, a potential escape route. The risks were evident: one wrong move, and he could find himself trapped. Yet survival prevailed over hesitation as he navigated through the coral labyrinth while the shark stayed in relentless pursuit. The shark's movements were driven by primal hunger, each pass bringing them nearer to their elusive target. Teeth scraped against the coral, leaving behind deep gouges and torn flesh. The water, once a clear canvas of beauty, became clouded with the metallic scent of blood. Ben's body bore the gruesome marks of the predator's relentless assault. The serrated teeth had left deep gouges in his flesh, the wetsuit offering little protection against the shark's brutal attempts to prey. Inside the narrow crevice, Ben, battered and bruised, felt the primal force of the predators. The confined space accentuated the brutality of their attacks, the serrated teeth leaving deep wounds in his flesh. Blood clouded the water around him, a stark contrast to the vibrant colors of the coral. Exhausted and with oxygen dwindling, Ben waited while hoping against hope for the sharks to lose interest. As the sharks circled the area around Ben's location, he lessened his movements to blend with the surroundings. He made his breathing slow and deliberate to conserve his dwindling oxygen supply. He knew that outrunning these apex predators was a futile attempt, so he held his breath. He bid his time and hoped for the best. As the sharks gradually lost interest and swam away, Ben cautiously emerged from the crevice. He swam upward, breaking the surface, gasping for air. The feeling of fresh air flooding his desperate lungs felt surreal. Ben fumbled for his whistle, and with all his might he blew hard to alert his boat. The people on the boat heard the distress signal and immediately sprang into action. Tracing the source of the sound, they saw Ben bobbing up and down as he floated on the surface, surrounded by crimson. Panic ensued as the crew rushed to Ben's aid. It was a frantic attempt to save their friend and colleague. One of the crew jumped into the water and immediately tied a rope around Ben's body. Back on the boat, a battered Ben reflected on the gruesome details of the attack. His body bore the scars of the struggle, a horrific reminder of the price one pays for daring to explore the unforgiving depths. His report, now more than a scientific account, became a narrative etched with the harsh realities of survival beneath the waves. The memory of the horrific encounter would forever linger in his mind, a vivid reminder of the brutality of the ocean. Yet even as he gazed back at the ocean, Ben understood that survival wasn't just about escaping predators. It was about preserving the delicate balance that sustained life. The inky blackness of the night enveloped the Great Barrier Reef as 38-year-old marine biologist Erica Price descended beneath the waves. Her dive light pierced the darkness, casting an eerie glow over the vibrant coral and schools of nocturnal sea creatures that had emerged to feed. Erica was conducting a survey of the reef's nighttime inhabitants, a passion project that had taken her years to gain approval for. She moved silently, her eyes scanning the reef for any signs of rare or unusual species. This was her element. The ocean, with all its mysteries and wonders, was where she felt most at home. As she drifted over a crevice, a dark shape caught the corner of her eye. Turning her head, Erica spotted a sleek gray form gliding through the water. It was a shark, a species she recognized as a normally docile blacktip reef shark, but something about its movement seemed off, more erratic and agitated than usual. Curiosity piqued, Erica began to follow the shark, carefully maintaining a safe distance as she observed its behavior. The shark's fins were held rigid, and its movements were jerky and unpredictable. It seemed distressed, its usual grace and fluidity replaced by an uncharacteristic aggression. Suddenly the shark turned and charged directly at Erica. She barely had time to react before the powerful predator slammed into her, its jaws clamping down on her right leg. Searing pain shot through her body as the shark's razor-sharp teeth tore into her flesh. Erica let out a muffled scream, bubbles streaming from her regulator as she desperately tried to break free. She could feel the bone in her leg cracking under the immense force of the shark's bite. Adrenaline surging, she began to strike at the shark's head, but its grip only tightened. Thrashing wildly, the shark began to drag Erica deeper into the reef. She clawed at its eyes and gill slits, trying in vain to force the predator to release its hold. Her lungs burned as she struggled to maintain control of her breathing, the panic of the situation threatening to overwhelm her. As the shark continued its relentless attack, Erica's vision began to blur. She could feel herself growing weaker, the loss of blood taking its toll. Just when she thought she couldn't hold on any longer, the shark suddenly released its grip and darted away. Disoriented and in agony, Erica frantically tried to swim back to the surface, but with her severely injured leg, the effort was agonizingly slow. She could feel the blackness closing in, her body desperate for air. With her last ounce of strength, Erica reached for the inflator on her buoyancy control device, desperate to reach the surface. As the air filled her suit, she began to rise, her mind racing as she prayed she would make it in time. The journey to the surface felt like an eternity, each stroke a battle against the crushing darkness and the searing pain in her mangled leg. Finally, Erica's head broke the surface, and she gulped in the precious air, coughing and sputtering. Disoriented and dazed, she frantically looked around, realizing to her horror that she was stranded on a small, isolated reef, barely big enough to accommodate her. The nearest shore was miles away, and with her severe injury, there was no way she could swim that distance. As the adrenaline began to wear off, the full extent of Erica's predicament sank in. She was alone, injured, and trapped in this tiny, fragile ecosystem, completely at the mercy of the ocean's unforgiving power. Shivering in the cool night air, Erica tried to assess the damage to her leg. The shark's powerful jaws had torn a massive gash, exposing the bone and muscle beneath. Blood continued to flow freely, and she knew she had to act quickly to prevent further blood loss and infection. Reaching into her dive bag, Erica retrieved a first aid kit and a length of sturdy rope. With trembling hands, she tightened a tourniquet around her thigh, wincing in pain as she applied pressure to the wound. She then used the rope to fashion a makeshift splint, immobilizing her leg to prevent further injury. As she worked, Erica's mind raced, trying to make sense of the shark's bizarre and violent behavior. Normally, black-tip reef sharks were known for their docility, rarely attacking humans unless provoked. Something must have been seriously wrong for the creature to have turned so aggressively. Exhausted and disoriented, Erica collapsed onto the reef, her eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of rescue. The vast expanse of the ocean seemed to mock her, a cruel reminder of her isolation and vulnerability. Through the long, agonizing hours of the night, Erica fought to stay conscious, her strength slowly ebbing away. She knew that if she succumbed to the darkness, she might never wake up. Forcing herself to remain alert, she turned her attention to the delicate ecosystem around her, using her considerable knowledge of marine biology to keep herself grounded. The reef was a fragile, intricate web of life, teeming with a dazzling array of creatures. Erica watched as small reef fish darted among the coral, while larger predators patrolled the periphery. She marveled at the resilience and adaptability of these organisms, their ability to thrive in such a harsh and unforgiving environment. As the first glimmers of dawn began to appear on the horizon, Erica heard the distant sound of a boat engine. Mustering the last of her strength, she frantically waved her dive light, desperate to attract the attention of her would-be rescuers. To her relief, the boat drew closer, and she soon found herself surrounded by a team of concerned divers and Coast Guard personnel. They quickly assessed her injuries and administered first aid before carefully transporting her to a nearby hospital. In the days that followed, Erica's recovery was slow and painful, both physically and emotionally. The trauma of the attack had left her shaken, and she struggled to come to terms with the fragility of her existence in the face of the ocean's raw power. But as she healed, Erica found solace in her work, diving deeper into the mystery of the shark's bizarre behavior. Through her research, she discovered that the blacktip reef shark had been exhibiting signs of a previously unknown neurological disorder caused by the accumulation of a potent neurotoxin in the local ecosystem. Armed with this knowledge, Erica dedicated herself to raising awareness and advocating for greater protection of the Great Barrier Reef. She knew that the ocean's delicate balance was constantly under threat, and that respect for its mysteries and unforgiving nature was essential for the survival of both marine life and humanity. The sea was calm as Alex Reynolds prepared for his solo expedition into San Pedro Reef. The small boat bobbed gently on the surface, its white paint weathered by the salt and sun. Alex is an expert diver who has spent the past 20 years of his life exploring different diving spots all over the world. Alex is a thrill seeker, but he never sought thrills in compromising his gears. He meticulously checked his gears, the tanks, regulators, every piece of equipment essential for the descent to the depths. He took a deep breath, adjusting the straps on his wetsuit as he peered into the clear blue waters. San Pedro Reef, despite being known for its stunning coral formations and diverse wildlife, is also known for the occasional appearance of bull sharks. Alex knew that the beautiful ocean awaited him, But he also knew that the dangers of the ocean lay in wait for his arrival. The initial descent was smooth as Alex marveled at the underwater world that unfolded before him. Schools of colorful fish darted around, indifferent to the lone human navigating the underwater terrain. It was so quiet, so peaceful. Alex thought to himself that he could remain that way forever and never complain. Yet the peace was short-lived. As Alex ventured deeper, he noticed a looming silhouette in the distance. He didn't know what it was, but he was certain that it was massive. It was slowly making its way towards him, and despite his years of experience, Alex felt a tinge of fear with how massive the creature was. As the silhouette crept closer and closer, Alex started moving away from it. But his pacing was outmatched by the approaching creature. After a minute, the massive form of a 13-foot bull shark materialized. Alex's heart quickened. He'd heard tales of San Pedro Reef and its unpredictable inhabitants, but the reality surpassed any story. Before he was able to escape completely, the massive shark circled beneath him, its cold, lifeless eyes locking onto Alex with unsettling focus. Alex remained suspended in the water, his every move calculated. But the bull shark sensed the human's intrusion. Minutes stretched, and the tension escalated. The subtle movement of the shark set Alex's senses on the edge. He was well aware of the behavior of the shark, and he realized that at any moment, the shark would attack. He was right. The shark suddenly lunged, its powerful tail propelling it forward. Alex reacted swiftly, dodging to the side as the shark's jaws clamped shut with a force that sent vibrations through the water. The bid for survival ensued. Alex instinctively propelled himself towards the coral formations, hoping to conceal himself amidst the protection of the corals. Alex navigated through narrow crevices, using the terrain to his disadvantage. But the bull shark was relentless in its pursuit. It mirrored Alex's every twist and turn. The shark's aggression intensified, its speed outmatching the speed of the fleeing diver. Suddenly, Alex felt the sting of the shark's teeth as they grazed his leg, tearing through his wet suit and leaving a trail of blood in the water. But Alex remained defiant. With every calculated dodge, the shark seemed to grow even more frustrated. With its primal instinct and unbridled aggression, the shark lunged once more, this time successfully clamping onto Alex's arm. The crunch of bone and tearing of flesh sent excruciating pain throughout the diver's being. But he was not ready to surrender. He fought to free himself, feeling the warm rush of blood clouding the space around him. Every minute felt like an eternity as Alex's oxygen supply dwindled. Panic threatened to take hold, but he fought against it, focusing on the fight for survival. With desperation fueling his attempt, Alex punched the shark's sensitive gills. The initial shock from the pain made the shark release its prey. In response, Alex ascended slightly, leading the bull shark away from the labyrinthine coral structures. The open water offered a temporary respite, but it was also a perilous terrain. The shark, fueled by instinct, closed the distance with renewed determination. Alex felt a surge of adrenaline, and his movements became more erratic. He calculated chaos in hopes of outmaneuvering the relentless predator. The struggle between predator and prey unfolded in the silence of the depths. Alex pushed forward, knowing that above the surface lies his salvation. But the shark was not ready to let go of his prey. As Alex pressed forward, the shark continued its pursuit. Finally, Alex breached the surface, the open ocean, and breathed fresh air, which was a welcome sensation to the panicked diver. In a frantic search for refuge from the rampaging shark, Alex spotted a nearby rock formation. With the last reserves of his energy, he propelled himself toward it, seeking momentary respite. The bull shark, momentarily thrown off by the sudden change, circled cautiously. It was a brief respite, but Alex seized the opportunity. The bruised and battered diver clung to the side of the rock formations. He grabbed a panic whistle attached to his suit and, with all his might, blew as hard as he could. He was hoping against hope that his crew would hear him. Alex knew that the bull shark was biding its time for another attack, but Alex forced himself between the cracks and crevices of the rock formation. This provided him with a wall of safety against the formidable beast. After a few minutes, a vessel materialized on the horizon. It was his boat. The crew heard his emergency whistle. With his remaining strength, he kept blowing at his whistle, both in the excitement of survival and in fear that the boat would miss his location. The boat and the crew rushed to get to his aid. Alex clung to the side of the boat as the crew hauled him aboard. Back on the boat, Alex's chest heaved with each labored breath. The crew rushed to provide first aid to his severely mangled arm. The captain of the ship sped across the ocean toward dry land, hoping to reach a medical facility before his injuries claimed Alex's life. In the end, Alex made it to a medical facility where he underwent several surgeries. But despite all the efforts of medical experts who tended to his injuries, Alex's arm was beyond saving and had to be amputated. But the battle, despite its lifelong consequences for Alex, has already been won. Alex survived the ordeal, and his life is proof that no beast can conquer the heart of a man fighting for his survival. On a sun-drenched afternoon in 2021, the Thompson family gathered on a private beach along the picturesque shores of Sanibel Island, Florida, for what was meant to be a memorable family reunion. The clear blue skies, warm sand, and the gentle sound of waves set the perfect backdrop for a day of joy, laughter, and reconnection. Within the family was Tyler Thompson, a spirited teenage boy who loves adventure and the ocean. The Thompson family, though close-knit, was as diverse as they come, with each member boasting unique skills and personalities. From John Thompson, the patriarch and a seasoned fisherman, to Linda Thompson, a nurse with years of experience, the family's wide range of expertise was a source of pride. However, this diversity often led to lively debates and disagreements, especially during gatherings like this. Despite their differences, the family shared a collective excitement for the day's activities, particularly jet skiing, a favorite pastime. Eager to show off his skills, Tyler was the first to hop on a jet ski, zipping across the sparkling waters with ease and laughter. His cousins cheered him on from the shore, capturing the moment with their camera phones, blissfully unaware of the drama that was about to unfold. A shadow lurked beneath the surface as Tyler maneuvered the jet ski farther from the shore. Unbeknownst to Tyler and his family, a shark, attracted by the noise and motion of the jet ski, was closing in. The shark, a formidable predator of the Florida waters, mistook Tyler's jet ski for potential prey, leading to a fateful encounter that would test the Thompson family like never before. Tyler's joyride took a terrifying turn when he felt a sudden, powerful tug on the jet ski. In a split second, the shark rammed into the jet ski, launching Tyler into the air before he crashed into the water. Panic set in as he felt the shark's jaws clamp down on his leg, and the searing pain was unlike anything he had ever experienced. On the shore, the family's laughter turned to horror as they witnessed the attack. Without a moment's hesitation, they sprang into action. With his knowledge of the sea and its creatures, John led the charge, grabbing a nearby boat to reach Tyler. Linda prepared the first aid kit, and her medical training kicked in as she anticipated Tyler would need the care. As John approached Tyler, the shark, perhaps realizing its mistake, released him and disappeared into the depths. John pulled his grandson from the water, his heart racing at the sight of the injuries. Back on the shore, Linda and the rest of the family worked together to administer first aid, their differences momentarily forgotten in the face of crisis. The attack on Tyler was a stark reminder of the ocean's unpredictability and the need for respect and caution when enjoying its beauty. As Tyler was rushed to the hospital, his family followed, their spirits shaken but united by a newfound sense of purpose and understanding. The incident on Sanibel Island was more than a terrifying encounter with a shark. It was a pivotal moment for the Thompson family. It tested their strength, brought them closer, and sparked a conversation about respecting marine life. But as they awaited news on Tyler's condition, the family knew that the ordeal was far from over. They were just beginning to grasp the full impact of the day's events on Tyler and the entire family. The days following Tyler's attack were a time of quiet introspection for the Thompsons. Gathered by Tyler's hospital bed, they shared stories, laughed at old memories, and discussed the day of the attack in hushed tones. During these moments of vulnerability, the family's superficial differences melted away, revealing a deep, unbreakable bond forged through love and shared experiences. Once the stoic patriarch John Thompson expressed his guilt for not foreseeing the danger despite his vast knowledge of the sea. Ever the caretaker, Linda reassured him, emphasizing that the ocean's mysteries were beyond anyone's control. Inspired by Tyler's bravery and the family's collective response, The younger Thompson spoke passionately about respecting the ocean and its inhabitants. Despite his ordeal, Tyler was the first to propose that the family use their experience as a catalyst for change. He suggested starting a community awareness program focused on marine life safety and conservation. The idea was met with unanimous support, igniting a spark of excitement amidst the somber atmosphere. In the following weeks, the Thompson family channeled their energies into the newly founded Thompson Marine Safety Initiative. They organized beach cleanups, educational seminars, and first aid workshops, advocating for a balanced relationship with the ocean. The initiative quickly gained momentum, drawing support from the local community and beyond. Once a harrowing tale of survival, Tyler's story transformed into a powerful message of coexistence and respect for nature. Schools invited him to speak about his experience, where he emphasized the beauty and fragility of marine ecosystems. The family's initiative became a testament to their resilience and commitment to making a positive impact. As Tyler made a full recovery, the Thompson family reflected on the journey they had undertaken. The shark attack, though a tragic event, had brought them closer, turning their differences into strengths. They had not only saved Tyler, but had also discovered a shared purpose that transcended their interests. The family reunion on Sanibel Island, meant to be a simple gathering, had evolved into a life-changing ordeal that reshaped the Thompsons' outlook on life and nature. They had witnessed firsthand the delicate balance between humans and the environment, and had emerged as advocates for its preservation. Ultimately, the Thompson family returned to the beach not as mere visitors, but as guardians of its wonders. With its endless mysteries and inherent dangers, the ocean continued to beckon. But now they approached it with a newfound respect and understanding. The reunion gone wrong had, paradoxically, set everything right, teaching the Thompsons the true meaning of family, courage, and coexistence with the natural world. The warm turquoise waters of Kealakekua Bay in Hawaii shimmered under the midday sun as 28-year-old Sandy and her husband, 30-year-old Rusty Harlow, waded into the cove, eager to explore the vibrant underwater world. It was the first day of their dream honeymoon, and the newlyweds were elated to be surrounded by the natural beauty of the Hawaiian Islands. As they donned their snorkel gear and plunged beneath the surface, they marveled at the abundance of colorful fish and coral that thrived in the protected marine sanctuary. Drifting effortlessly side by side, Sandy and Rusty followed the contours of the rocky seafloor, their eyes darting excitedly from one stunning sight to the next. The rhythmic sound of their breathing through the snorkel tubes created a calming soundtrack to their underwater exploration. Suddenly, a dark shadow appeared in the distance, rapidly approaching their location. Sandy felt a jolt of fear as she recognized the distinct silhouette of a large shark. Instinctively, she reached out and grabbed Rusty's hand, signaling him to stay close. The shark's massive form grew larger with each passing second, and Sandy could feel her heart pounding in her chest. As the predator drew nearer, she could make out its slate-gray skin and powerful torpedo-shaped body. It was an 11-foot tiger shark, one of the most dangerous species in the ocean. Without warning, the shark launched itself towards them, its massive jaws open wide. Sandy barely had time to react before it slammed into Rusty, clamping down on his right leg with bone-crushing force. The sickening crunch of bone and the agonized screams that escaped Rusty's regulator sent a chill down Sandy's spine. She watched in horror as the shark thrashed violently, tearing into her husband's flesh with every violent shake of its head. Instinctively, Sandy began to strike at the shark's sensitive snout, her fists pummeling the predator's face in a desperate attempt to make it release its grip. But the powerful beast seemed unfazed, its singular focus on tearing Rusty to shreds. As the shark continued its relentless assault, Sandy could see life draining from her husband's eyes. Blood was gushing from the savage wound, clouding the water around them in a crimson haze. Rusty's movements grew weaker, his strength ebbing away with every second. Filled with primal rage and terror, Sandy clawed at the shark's eyes, trying to open its jaws. But the creature's grip was like a vice, its teeth sinking deeper into Rusty's leg with each passing moment. Suddenly, the shark released its hold and backed away, its dark eyes fixed on Sandy. She stared back, her own eyes wild with fear and adrenaline. Knowing she had to act quickly, she grabbed Rusty and began frantically swimming towards the surface, dragging his limp body through the water. The journey upwards was agonizingly slow, with Sandy's muscles burning from the exertion. She could feel Rusty slipping away in her arms, his labored breathing growing fainter by the second. The shark followed closely, its predatory instincts still on high alert. As they neared the surface, Sandy could see that Rusty's leg was a mangled, bloody mess. She knew that without immediate medical attention, he would bleed out. Summoning every ounce of her strength, she pushed towards the shimmering light above, her lungs burning from the lack of air. Finally, their heads broke the surface and Sandy gasped for breath, her eyes scanning the horizon for help. To her relief, she spotted a small boat in the distance and began to wave frantically, her voice hoarse from screaming. The boat's occupants quickly maneuvered towards them, alerted by the commotion. As they pulled the injured Rusty aboard, Sandy could see the horror on their faces. The gaping wound in his leg was a gruesome sight, and she knew that their dream honeymoon had turned into a living nightmare. The boat raced towards the shore, Sandy cradling Rusty's head in her lap as she desperately applied pressure to the wound, trying to stem the flow of blood. His skin was pale, his breathing was shallow, and she feared the worst. By the time they reached the beach, a team of paramedics was already waiting. They quickly loaded Rusty onto a stretcher and rushed him to the nearest hospital, Sandy following close behind, her hand gripping his tightly. Sandy paced the waiting room in the frantic hours that followed, her mind consumed by a whirlwind of fear and uncertainty. The doctors had immediately rushed Rusty into emergency surgery, and she knew that his survival hung by a thread. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the surgeon finally emerged, his expression grave. The attack had been savage, he explained, with the shark's powerful jaws nearly severing Rusty's leg. The damage was extensive, and he warned Sandy that her husband faced a long and arduous recovery if he even survived. Sandy felt her knees buckle as the weight of the surgeon's words sank in. She had nearly lost the love of her life, and the thought of a future without him was unbearable. Collapsing into a chair, she allowed the tears to flow freely, her body racked with sobs. In the days that followed, Rusty's condition remained precarious, with the threat of infection and blood loss ever present. Sandy never left his side, holding his hand and whispering words of encouragement as he fought for his life. The memory of the attack haunted her. The image of the shark's jaws clamping down on Rusty's legs seared into her mind. She relived the terror of those moments, the helplessness she had felt as she watched her husband being torn apart by the savage predator. Yet, even in the darkest moments, Sandy's determination never wavered. She knew she had to be strong, not just for Rusty, but for the fragile future they had fought so hard to build together. Their vows, spoken just weeks earlier, now took on a new and deeper meaning, a solemn promise to weather any storm that life threw their way. As Rusty's recovery slowly progressed, Sandy marveled at his resilience. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but with each passing day she saw the glimmer of hope returning to his eyes. Together they would face the challenges, and their love and commitment to each other would be stronger than ever before. In the end, the shark attack had tested the very fabric of their relationship, but also forged an unbreakable bond. Sandy knew that their love had been tempered in the crucible of adversity, and that nothing, not even the vast and unforgiving ocean, could ever tear them apart. The salty scent of the sea breeze caressed the cheeks of friends Emily Thompson, Olivia Harris, Sophia Davis, and Jessica Wilson. This group of four shared an adventurous spirit and deep passion for recreational deep-sea diving that allowed them to explore the underwater realms despite their professional careers. On a sunny Saturday morning, they convened at the marina near Cairns, Australia, to prepare for another excursion out to the iconic Great Barrier Reef. Having dived at this location numerous times before without incident, an underlying current of excitement still rippled through them. The ocean's unpredictability a constant lure. With scuba gear meticulously checked, they boarded a charter boat, destined for a favored dive spot roughly 15 kilometers offshore. The warm tropical waters and incredible biodiversity made this a diver's paradise to experience again. One by one, the friends rolled off the boat's deck into the azure embrace, immediately immersing themselves in the breathtaking coral wonderland, teeming with vibrant marine life. Emily took the lead as they navigated through canyons and overhangs formed by the reef. Approximately 20 minutes under the surface, Jessica's peripheral vision picked up an unusually massive shape penetrating the sun-dappled waters. Her heart raced as the fleeting silhouette eerily resembled that of a colossal shark. But it vanished as quickly as it materialized, prompting her to rejoin the others and dismiss it as a trick of the light and shadow. With air tanks dwindling after an hour's exploration, Emily signaled it was time to begin their controlled ascent. She led the way back up towards the anxiously awaiting boat above, adhering to the ascension safety protocols. When just 10 meters from breaking the surface, a 12-foot great white shark exploded from the depths, honing in on Emily with terrifying precision. Its powerful jaws clamped down with bone-crushing force on her midsection before she could even react. The predator's bite pulverized her ribs and internal organs, despite the protective layers of her wetsuit and buoyancy vest. Emily convulsed in shock and agony as blood began clouding the water. In its frenzy, the beast managed to clamp its vice-like jaws over Emily's exposed neck. With a whipping motion, it violently ripped her head clean off in a sickening display of raw power. Sophia, Olivia, and Jessica looked on helplessly as their friend met her end in such a horrifically abrupt manner. Emily's decapitated body went limp, her severed head initiating a gruesome descent trailed by her sinking torso leaking a crimson plume. Adrenaline took over, and Sophia instinctively began swimming straight for the surface at maximum speed. But the shark's primal senses had already locked onto its next target. Driven by its powerful tail, the great white closed the gap in a blur of motion. Its gaping jaws engulfed the top of Sophia's head and shoulders as if a bear trap had sprung shut around her. What little cries Sophia could muster were abruptly silenced as the serrated teeth sheared through her neck with mechanistic efficiency. Her body unnaturally contorted for a fleeting instant before slumping lifelessly, thick clouds of her blood dispersing into the surrounding water. The shark thrashed its head wildly, ripping away Sophia's mutilated face and scalp while swallowing chunks of her flesh. Her corpse began its rapid descent, spinning erratically under the pull of the weights integrated into her dive vest. In sheer panic, Olivia and Jessica frantically finned towards the surface, exhaling precious lungfuls of air that created a contrail of bubbles, marking their desperate flight path. But the shark had already picked up the trail. Olivia and Jessica's frantic finning did little to outpace the great white as it homed in on them with chilling precision. Its massive form powered through the water, jaws agape, ready to strike again without mercy. Jessica's mind raced as the unmistakable shape rapidly grew larger in her periphery. She watched in abject horror as the shark surged past her, zeroing in on Olivia just a few meters away. Time seemed to slow as the predator's approach was inexorably inevitable. The great white launched itself at Olivia, clamping its powerful jaws around her right leg just below the knee. Olivia's shrill screams pierced the water as the shark violently thrashed its massive head from side to side. Her cries were abruptly cut short with a haunting crack of shattering bones as her leg was violently ripped away. Reacting on instinct, Olivia clutched the traumatic wound desperately, trying to stem the forceful stream of blood now billowing out, her air bubbles turning a pallid red. Jessica swam towards her friend but was helpless against the shark's relentless onslaught. The predator shifted its focus back to Olivia, this time managing to bite down on her diver's vest and pull her into the depths. A frenzied struggle played out, Olivia fighting against the behemoth with every ounce of fading strength. But it was a brutally lopsided battle as the shark methodically dismembered her, shaking her body wildly like a chew toy. Thick red clouds mushroomed into the surrounding water as Olivia's life rapidly slipped away, her armor-piercing screams devolving into gargled howls. When her dead weight finally went still, the great white began whipping the mangled corpse back and forth before cruelly discarding it toward the ocean floor. Jessica became acutely aware she was now utterly alone, as her friend's butchered remains disappeared from view into the gloom below. Her heart pounded so forcefully she could feel it throughout her entire body. Every primal instinct screamed at her to flee towards the surface before being hunted down herself. Kicking feverishly, she fought against her body's urge to hold her breath as the burning need for air now competed with sheer terror. Finally breaking the surface, she gasped and retched in the rocking waves, frantically pulling herself towards the safety of the idling charter boat. The gut-wrenching wails of the surviving friend alerted the crew, who quickly threw her a life preserver and hoisted her aboard the vessel. In shock and overcome with grief, Jessica could only murmur in broken words about the unimaginable horror that had unfolded below. Hours later, when the search crew finally arrived, their efforts could only recover the mangled remains, disjointed limbs, ragged flesh, and 3 severed heads. The Great White's frenzy had utterly defiled the 4 friends, leaving just Jessica to carry the emotional scars and nightmares from that fateful dive. In the vibrant waters of Jeffreys Bay, South Africa, renowned for its perfect waves and a haven for surfers worldwide, the stage was set for an event to captivate the global surfing community. In 2009, Mia Hamilton, a female professional surfer known for her bold and fearless approach to big wave surfing, was poised to leave her mark on the prestigious annual surfing competition. With her striking determination and unparalleled skill, Mia had always been drawn to the ocean's might. To her, surfing was not just a sport, but a profound connection with nature, a dance with the waves that few could master as she did. Jeffreys Bay presented the ultimate challenge with its legendary right-hand surf break, and Mia was more than ready to meet it. As the competition commenced, the air was thick with anticipation. Spectators from around the globe watched as Mia paddled out, her figure a silhouette against the shimmering backdrop of the morning sun. Her first waves were spectacular, a testament to her prowess and deep understanding of the sea's rhythms. However, for all its beauty, the ocean harbors dangers that even the most experienced surfers can underestimate. Unbeknownst to Mia and the onlookers, a massive shark lurked in the depths, drawn by the crowds of surfers and the competition frenzy. Mia's final wave, a towering behemoth of water, was her triumph. As she navigated its colossal curve with grace and precision, a shadow beneath the surface mirrored her every move. In an instant, a display of human skill and bravery became a scene of nature's unpredictable power. The shark, an apex predator of the seas, attacked with a speed and force that left no room for escape. In a chaotic flurry of water, Mia felt the shark's jaws clamp down on her leg, the pain searing and immediate. The competition's safety team sprang into action, their efforts swift and coordinated, but the damage was done. Mia was pulled from the water, her leg grievously injured, the shock and realization of what had happened etching deep lines of disbelief on her face. The attack, broadcast live to thousands, sent shock and empathy across the surfing community and beyond. Mia Hamilton, the fearless surfer who had faced the ocean's might, was now fighting a different battle that would end her career and start a new journey of discovery and purpose. As Mia lay in the hospital grappling with the end of her surfing career, her thoughts drifted to the shark, the creature that had instantly changed her life. It was a pivotal moment, realizing that the ocean she loved and respected was a complex ecosystem where humans were merely visitors. While the attack was a tragic end to her surfing ambitions, it ignited a spark within Mia, a determination to understand and protect the marine life she had always connected with. Mia's journey from a professional surfer to a passionate advocate for marine conservation was just beginning. The shark attack at Jeffreys Bay, a moment of terror and pain, was also a call to action, a chance to use her fame and experience to make a difference in the world of marine ecosystems. Mia Hamilton, once celebrated for riding the waves, was now on a path to safeguard the creatures that roam the depths of the oceans, including the sharks that had altered her destiny. Determined not to let her ordeal define her, Mia embarked on a journey to understand the intricate balance of marine ecosystems. She spent months in recovery, poring over books and documentaries and engaging with marine biologists and conservationists. Her fame as a surfer gave her a platform, and she decided to use it to advocate for protecting marine life, with a particular focus on sharks, the very creatures that had altered the course of her life. Mia's transformation from a surfer to a marine conservation advocate was met with surprise and admiration from her peers and the public. She began to speak at schools, community centers, and international conferences, sharing her story not as a tale of victimhood, but as a powerful narrative of coexistence and respect for the ocean's inhabitants. Realizing the impact of her voice, Mia founded Waves of Balance, a non-profit organization dedicated to marine conservation with an emphasis on educating people about sharks. Her initiatives ranged from organizing beach cleanups to funding shark behavior and habitat preservation research. Mia's message was clear. Understanding and respecting the delicate balance of marine ecosystems is crucial for their and our survival. Mia's advocacy was highlighted when she returned to Jeffreys Bay, not as a competitor, but as a champion for the ocean, standing on the same shores that had witnessed her near-fatal encounter. Mia launched a global campaign aimed at reducing shark attacks through education and prevention strategies, rather than culling or avoidance. Her efforts were instrumental in implementing shark spotting programs and promoting non-invasive tracking technologies that benefited sharks and humans. Years after the attack, Mia Hamilton's legacy was not defined by the records she had set as a surfer, but by the waves of change she inspired in marine conservation. Her fearless approach to surfing had transitioned into a courageous commitment to protecting the ocean and its inhabitants. Her story became a testament to the power of resilience and the impact one individual can have on fostering harmony between humanity and nature. The surfer's last wave had been a turning point, but the ripples from that moment had grown into a tidal wave of awareness and action. Mia looked at the ocean, her heart filled with nostalgia and hope. The sea had taken so much from her, but it had also given her a purpose far more significant than any wave she had ever ridden. In the end, Mia Hamilton had found her balance, not on a surfboard, but in her unwavering commitment to the marine life that thrives beneath the waves. Ryan Christopher had always been drawn to the vastness and mysteries of the ocean. As a seasoned sailor and marine biologist, he felt most alive when navigating the open waters, charting courses through the open expanse of the Pacific Ocean. Yet even with his knowledge of the sea, he is aware that even the most experienced seafarers could find themselves at the mercy of the ocean's wrath. The ocean stretched out endlessly around Ryan as he sailed across the vast expanse of the Pacific, his boat slicing through the waves with practiced ease. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a golden hue over the water and reflecting off the surface. As Ryan continued his solo voyage, he gradually ventured further from the safety of the shore. Initially drawn to the ocean's vast wonders, he began to feel a growing sense of unease. Nevertheless, Ryan persisted, driven by his curiosity and determination to confront his fears. Then, on a particular day, the calm waters and clear skies were interrupted by distant thunder. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, transforming the peaceful scene into something more ominous. With a quickening pulse, Ryan recognized the approaching storm's potential danger. With lightning flashing across the sky and thunder echoing like a warning bell, Ryan scrambled to secure everything on deck. He battened down the hatches, double-checking knots and lashing down loose equipment as the first gusts of wind began to whip through the air. But despite his best efforts, the storm proved relentless, its fury escalating with each passing moment. Waves rose like towering behemoths, crashing against the hull with bone-rattling force. The wind howled like a banshee, tearing at the sails and threatening to capsize the boat with every gust. Ryan clung desperately to the wheel, his knuckles white with exertion as he fought to keep the boat on course. But it was a losing battle, the sheer force of the storm overwhelming his efforts with its unrelenting power. And then, with a deafening roar, disaster struck. A massive wave taller than any Ryan had ever seen. The boat was lifted high into the air, then sent crashing down with bone-jarring force, the impact reverberating through the hull. Ryan was thrown from the deck, his body tumbling through the air before crashing into the churning sea below. Salt water stung his eyes and burned his throat as he fought to surface, the waves threatening to drag him down into their dark depths. When he finally broke free, gasping for air, Ryan found himself surrounded by debris from the broken parts of the boat. The boat lay shattered and broken, its once proud mast snapped like a twig, and its hull was battered and bruised by the relentless assault of wind and waves. But even as Ryan clung to the wreckage, struggling to stay afloat amidst the turmoil, he felt a new sense of danger looming beneath the surface. A dark shape glided through the water below, its sleek form cutting through the waves like a knife through butter. It was a 15-foot hammerhead shark, an apex predator known for its size, strength, and ferocity. Ryan's blood ran cold as he watched the shark circle closer, its peculiar eyes unmistakable amidst the raging waters. He knew he was in grave danger, stranded in the open sea with nothing but his wits and a few pieces of flotsam to protect him. The shark circled closer, drawn by the scent of blood and the promise of an easy meal. Ryan's heart pounded in his chest as he watched its dorsal fin slice through the water, a silent harbinger of death. Desperate to fend off the shark, Ryan searched the wreckage for anything he could use as a weapon. His hands closed around a jagged piece of metal, torn from the hull by the force of the storm. It was crude and makeshift, but it was all he had. As the shark circled closer, Ryan lunged forward, brandishing the makeshift weapon like a spear. But the shark was undeterred, its movements sleek and sinuous as it closed in for the kill. With a sudden burst of speed, the shark lunged forward, its jaws gaping wide. Ryan swung the makeshift spear with all his strength, aiming for the shark's gaping maw. The metal tore through flesh and bone, making the shark recoil in pain. But it was not enough to deter the relentless predator, which continued its assault with renewed ferocity. Blood stained the water as the shark's teeth sank into Ryan's flesh, tearing through muscle and sinew. He screamed in agony as the pain washed over him in waves, threatening to engulf him in its relentless grip. But Ryan refused to give up. With every ounce of strength he possessed, he fought back against the shark, using every weapon at his disposal to fend off the relentless onslaught. Minutes turned into hours as the battle raged on, each moment a struggle for survival against the relentless jaws of death. But Ryan refused to surrender to despair, clinging to the fragile hope of survival. In a final, desperate act of defiance, Ryan summoned the last of his strength and thrust the makeshift spear into the shark's eye. The creature thrashed in agony, its primal instincts overridden by searing pain. With a final triumphant cry, Ryan watched as the shark retreated into the depths, its blood mingling with his own in the water. He had won the battle, but the war raged on, his fate hanging in the balance as he clung to the wreckage of his shattered boat. Summoning every ounce of strength he had left, Ryan rummaged through the floating debris, looking for his survival kit. And there it was, floating amidst the wreckage, the bright orange bag of salvation. Ryan dashed towards it and checked its content. There he saw a bunch of flares. Ryan instantly took the flare gun and aimed it towards the sky. He closed his eyes, half praying that the flare would not falter, that it would shoot a signal towards the sky. With all his survival hopes hinged on this contraption, he fired the signal into the sky, praying for a passing ship to see it. A bright flare shot out. But Ryan knew it was not a guarantee that anyone would see it. So he went back to the floating wreckage and laid on his back, exhausted and almost out of energy. He looked at the night sky. The stars looked beautiful. He smiled, knowing that this might be the last time that he would see the night sky. He was starting to lose hope. He closed his eyes, tears welling up, and just when he thought all hope was lost, a cargo ship appeared on the horizon, drawn by the beacon of his distress signal. As the ship's crew pulled him aboard, Ryan felt a wave of relief wash over him. His fight for survival against the hammerhead shark had tested his limits and pushed him to the brink of despair. But in the end, he emerged victorious, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the indomitable will to survive in the face of unimaginable adversity. Salty wind whipped through her hair as 27-year-old Mary Romero leaned into the tiller, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The sleek racing yacht surged forward, cutting through the choppy waves of the open ocean with effortless grace. This was her element, the thrill of high-stakes competition, the raw power of the elements, the endless expanse of blue. Mary was competing in the prestigious Around the Islands Regatta, a grueling multi-day race that challenged even the most experienced sailors. As she navigated her boat through the treacherous currents surrounding a remote chain of volcanic islands, her every muscle was taut with concentration, her mind laser-focused on the race ahead. Suddenly, a massive impact rocked the yacht, sending Mary tumbling across the deck. Before she could react, the boat capsized, tipping her violently into the churning waters below. Disoriented and gasping for air, she frantically searched for the surface, her limbs thrashing against the crushing weight of the waves. As she broke through to the open air, Mary's heart sank. The yacht was gone, overturned and drifting away in the strong current. Worse still, she could see a dark shape circling beneath the surface, a 12-foot bull shark drawn by the commotion. Adrenaline surging, Mary began to swim, her powerful strokes propelling her away from the predator's lair. But the shark was relentless, its sleek form cutting through the water with terrifying speed. Mary could feel its presence closing in, the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end. Just as she was about to reach a small, rocky island in the distance, the shark struck. Its massive jaws clamped down on her left leg, sinking its razor-sharp teeth deep into her flesh. Mary let out a scream of agony, the sound muffled by the churning water. Thrashing in desperation, she pummeled the shark's head with her fists, her fingernails clawing at its sensitive eyes. But the powerful predator refused to let go, its powerful body twisting and turning as it sought to tear the limb from her body. The pain was excruciating, and Mary could feel herself weakening as the blood gushed from the wound. Her vision began to blur, and her movements grew sluggish. Just when she thought she couldn't hold on any longer, the shark suddenly released its grip and retreated into the depths. Dazed and disoriented, Mary managed to reach the small rocky outcrop, dragging her mangled leg onto the jagged surface. The shark had ripped a massive gash in her thigh, exposing the bone and muscle beneath. Bile rose in her throat as she surveyed the gruesome injury, her hands trembling as she tried to stem the bleeding. Knowing she had to act quickly, Mary tore a strip of fabric from her wetsuit and used it to fashion a tourniquet, tightening it around her leg with agonizing force. The pain was searing, but she knew it was the only way to stop the hemorrhaging. As she lay there gasping for breath, Mary's mind raced. The remote islands were miles from the nearest populated area, and with her severely injured leg, she had little chance of reaching safety on her own. The thought of being stranded alone and at the mercy of the ocean's predators was a terrifying prospect. Yet despite her fear, Mary's competitive spirit refused to be extinguished. She had come too far, fought too hard to give up now. Gritting her teeth against the agony, she began to assess her surroundings, searching for any sign of hope. The small island was little more than a jagged, barren rock with no fresh water or shelter to be found. But as Mary scanned the horizon, she noticed a faint plume of smoke in the distance, a sign that other boats might be in the area. Knowing she couldn't remain on the exposed island, Mary carefully slid back into the water, her injured leg trailing behind her. The shark was nowhere to be seen, but she knew it was only a matter of time before the predator returned to finish the job. With agonizing strokes, she began to swim towards the distant smoke signal, her every muscle burning with the effort. The journey felt endless, and Mary could feel herself growing weaker with each passing minute. The blood loss was taking its toll, and her vision began to blur. Just as she was about to give in to the darkness, a distant voice called out, and Mary mustered the last of her strength to wave her arms. A small fishing boat, its crew alerted by the commotion, had spotted her and was racing towards her location. As they pulled her aboard, Mary collapsed, her body racked with pain and exhaustion. The fishermen, horrified by the extent of her injuries, immediately radioed for emergency medical assistance, knowing that time was of the essence. The helicopter arrived within minutes, and Mary was rushed to the nearest hospital, where a team of surgeons fought to save her leg. The damage was severe, and they warned her that she faced a long and arduous recovery, with the possibility of permanent disability. In the days that followed, Mary's determination never wavered. She had come too far to let a shark attack derail her dreams. With unwavering focus and a fierce competitive spirit, she threw herself into the grueling physical therapy regimen, her every waking moment consumed by the drive to regain her strength and mobility. As the weeks turned into months, Mary's progress was slow but steady. The scars on her leg, a constant reminder of the harrowing ordeal, only fueled her resolve. She knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but she was no stranger to adversity. This was just another obstacle to overcome, another race to win. In the serene paradise of Rangoli Island, Maldives, where the azure waters meet the sky, Henry Adams found himself far removed from the world of books and theories he was accustomed to. A shy, bookish man by nature, Henry had spent most of his life within the confines of academia, poring over texts and dreaming of distant lands and oceans. In 2002, seeking a break from his routine, he took a solo vacation to the Maldives, a place he had only read about in travel magazines and scientific journals. Henry's days on Rangali Island were a mix of awe and quiet introspection. He marveled at the crystal-clear waters, the vibrant marine life, and the gentle rhythm of island life. Yet, despite the beauty surrounding him, Henry remained a spectator, hesitant to step too far out of his comfort zone. He preferred the safety of his beachfront villa and the familiar company of his books to the unpredictable nature of the ocean. One afternoon, as Henry sat on the beach lost in a novel, his attention was drawn to the sound of laughter and splashing water. A few meters away, a group of children played in the shallow waters, their parents nearby, soaking up the sun. Among them was a young boy, no more than 6 years old, who ventured farther from the shore, his tiny arms paddling with innocent enthusiasm. Without warning, the tranquility of the scene was shattered. A shadow darted through the water toward the boy. A shark, its sleek form cutting through the shallow waters with terrifying speed. Panic erupted on the beach as the child's parents screamed, paralyzed by fear. The other children scrambled to the safety of the sand, but the boy remained unaware of the danger looming behind him. At that moment, something shifted within Henry. The shy, reserved man who had always shied away from danger found himself propelled by a force he didn't know he possessed. Dropping his book, he sprinted toward the water, his heart pounding in his chest, driven by a single thought: to save the child. As he reached the water, Henry's mind raced. He had read about sharks, their behavior, and how to deter an attack, but theory differed vastly from practice. Without time to think, he plunged into the water, shouting and splashing, making himself as big and loud as possible to scare the shark away. The shark, perhaps surprised by Henry's sudden charge, hesitated. It circled once, its black eyes assessing the new threat. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, turned and disappeared into the deeper waters. Henry reached the boy, grabbed him, and pulled him back to the safety of the shore, where his parents enveloped him in tearful embraces. Henry's actions that day went beyond saving the boy's life. As news of his bravery spread, he found himself the center of attention, receiving respect and admiration from those around him, something he had never experienced. Henry felt like a hero for the first time in his life, not for his intellect, but his courage. The incident on Rangali Island was a turning point for Henry Adams. No longer content to be a mere observer of life, he realized that authentic learning came from books and experience. His bravery had not only changed the trajectory of a young boy's life, but had set Henry on a new path that would lead him to embrace adventure, and eventually, to a career that combined his love for the ocean with his newfound courage. This newfound confidence sparked Henry's desire to explore and learn through reading and living. He began to take risks, signing up for diving lessons, participating in marine conservation activities, and even giving impromptu talks about shark behavior and safety in the ocean, drawing on the knowledge he had acquired through years of study, but had never shared in such a public way. As his vacation drew close, Henry realized he could not simply return to his old life. The experience had awakened a passion for marine biology that he could not ignore. Inspired by the delicate balance of marine ecosystems and the urgent need for their protection, Henry decided to pursue a career in marine conservation. Returning home, Henry enrolled in a marine biology program, dedicating himself to studying the oceans with an enthusiasm that surprised even himself. His experience in the Maldives motivated and guided him, shaping his approach to his studies and future career. He focused on shark behavior, driven by a desire to understand these misunderstood creatures and contribute to efforts to ensure their survival and the safety of those who share their waters. Years passed, and Henry emerged as a respected marine biologist known for his expertise and commitment to conservation. He worked on projects worldwide, advocating for protecting marine habitats and the species that depend on them. He became a voice for the ocean, speaking at conferences, in schools, and through media, sharing his story and the lessons he had learned. Henry never forgot the moment that had set him on this path, the fear, the adrenaline, and the profound sense of purpose he had felt as he raced into the water to save a child. It was a reminder that courage could manifest in the most unlikely of heroes, and that a single act of bravery could ripple outwards, touching lives and inspiring change. The shy, bookish man who had once viewed the world from the sidelines had become a champion for its oceans, using his fame not for personal glory, but to protect the creatures that had changed his path forever. Once an unlikely hero, Henry Adams had found his place as a spectator and guardian of its most precious and mysterious treasures. Warm rays of sunlight filtered through the crystalline waters of the Yucatan Peninsula as 32-year-old Dwayne Garrison descended into the gaping maw of the underwater cave system. His heart raced with a mix of excitement and trepidation. He had long dreamed of exploring these mysterious submerged labyrinths, but he also knew the inherent dangers that lay within. Flanked by his experienced dive team, Dwayne's eyes scanned the eerie, dimly lit caverns. His senses heightened to every subtle movement and every whisper of the current. The air in his tank felt heavy, a constant reminder of the finite nature of his underwater existence. As they progressed deeper into the system, the passage began to narrow, forcing the divers to navigate the twisting, claustrophobic tunnels with utmost caution. Dwayne followed closely behind his guide, his focus unwavering, determined to commit every detail of the layout to memory. Suddenly, a flash of movement in the periphery of his vision caused Dwayne to jerk his head to the side. There, in the murky gloom, he caught a glimpse of a massive, sinuous form, a shark, its powerful body undulating silently through the water. Adrenaline surging, Dwayne signaled to his teammates, but before they could react, the shark launched itself toward him, its jaws gaping wide. With nowhere to go, Dwayne could only watch in horror as the predator's massive head crashed into him, its razor-sharp teeth tearing into his right arm. The pain was searing, and Dwayne let out a muffled scream, bubbles erupting from his regulator as the shark thrashed violently. Its powerful body slammed him against the cave wall, the rock tearing into his wetsuit and flesh. Frantic, Dwayne began to strike at the shark's sensitive snout, his gloved fists pummeling the creature's face. But the predator refused to relinquish its grip, its jaws clamping down with bone-crushing force. As the shark's teeth sank deeper, Dwayne could feel the bones in his arm beginning to crack. The agony was overwhelming, and he knew that if he didn't act quickly, he wouldn't survive. Summoning every ounce of his strength, Dwayne managed to land a powerful blow to the shark's eye, causing the creature to release its hold momentarily. Seizing the opportunity, he frantically swam towards the surface, his movements hampered by the swirling currents and his severely injured arm. The journey upwards felt endless, and Dwayne's lungs burned from the lack of oxygen. He could feel the darkness closing in, his vision blurring as the blood loss took its toll. Just when he thought he couldn't hold on any longer, a glimmer of light pierced the gloom and he broke through the surface, gasping for air. Dazed and disoriented, Dwayne scanned his surroundings, realizing with a sinking heart that he had become separated from his dive team. Alone and injured, he knew his chances of survival were slim, especially with the shark still lurking in the depths below. Summoning his remaining strength, Dwayne began to swim towards a nearby rock formation, his injured arm hanging limply at his side. The pain was excruciating, and he could feel the warm blood oozing from the gaping wound. As he dragged himself onto the rocky outcrop, Dwayne assessed the damage, his heart sinking at the sight of the deep gashes and broken bones. He knew he had to act quickly to stem the bleeding and prevent infection, but with his limited supplies, the task seemed daunting. Desperate, Dwayne ripped a strip of fabric from his wetsuit and used it to fashion a tourniquet, tightening it around his arm with agonizing force. The pain was blinding, but he knew it was the only way to stop the hemorrhaging. Shivering in the cool water, Dwayne scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of his dive team or a passing boat. But the ocean seemed vast and empty, a cruel reminder of his isolation. Suddenly, a dark shape caught the corner of his eye, and his heart sank. The shark had returned, its massive form gliding through the water towards him. Panic gripping him, Dwayne frantically looked around, his mind racing for a way to escape the predator's clutches. With nowhere to hide and his air supply dwindling, Dwayne knew he had to act quickly. Summoning his courage, he began to splash and thrash in the water, hoping to scare the shark away. But the predator remained undeterred, its soulless eyes fixed on its injured prey. As the shark drew closer, Dwayne braced himself, his injured arm cradled against his chest. The creature's powerful jaws opened wide, and Dwayne could see the rows of razor-sharp teeth glistening in the sunlight. In a desperate move, Dwayne suddenly lunged forward, his good hand reaching out to shove the shark's sensitive snout. The creature recoiled in surprise but quickly regained its composure, its powerful body slamming into Dwayne's side. The impact sent Dwayne tumbling back into the water, his injured arm flailing helplessly. The shark circled him, its powerful tail propelling it forward with ease. Dwayne knew he had to find a way to escape, but his energy was fading, and the darkness threatened to consume him. With his last ounce of strength, Dwayne began to swim, his strokes weak and uncoordinated. The shark followed its massive form, cutting through the water with ease. Dwayne's lungs burned, and his vision began to blur, but he refused to give up. Suddenly, he caught sight of a small cave opening in the distance, and without hesitation, he changed direction, pushing himself toward the narrow crevice. The shark pursued, but its bulky frame made it difficult to maneuver in the tight confines. As Dwayne squeezed through the opening, he could feel the shark's jaws snap at his heels, but he managed to evade the predator's grasp. Battered and exhausted, he found himself in a small, air-filled chamber, his head breaking the surface. Gasping for air, Dwayne took stock of his injuries, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that he had to find a way to signal his dive team or attract the attention of any passing boats, but the task seemed almost impossible with his severely damaged arm. Yet even in the face of such adversity, Dwayne's determination never wavered. He had come too far, fought too hard, to give up now. With renewed focus, he began to search the cave for any means of escape, his mind racing with a desperate plan to survive. The story of Dwayne's harrowing encounter with the shark would become a cautionary tale, a reminder of the importance of preparation, respect, and vigilance when exploring the underwater world. But for Dwayne, it was a testament to the human spirit, a triumph of will over the unforgiving forces of nature. Lieutenant Sarah Jensen found herself far beyond the ordinary call of duty, in the vast and mysterious expanse of the Sargasso Sea, part of the North Atlantic Ocean, known for its seaweed clumps and unique ecosystem. Sarah, a skilled Navy pilot, was on a routine flight mission over these cold waters when her jet began to malfunction. Despite her extensive training and calm demeanor, it became clear that the only option was to eject and await rescue in the shark-infested waters below. The day had started like any other, with Sarah conducting pre-flight checks and reviewing her mission parameters. However, as she piloted her jet over the Sargasso Sea, the engine started to emit a worrisome noise, followed by a sudden loss of power. Sarah's training kicked in immediately. She transmitted a mayday signal, secured her life vest, and ejected from the jet, parachuting into the cold, dark waters below. Landing in the water, Sarah's survival training became the difference between life and death. The Sargasso Sea, while beautiful, is notorious for its population of sharks, drawn to the area by the abundant sea life that thrives among the floating seaweed. As Sarah floated in the water, her pilot suit providing minimal warmth against the cold, she knew that staying calm and using her training was crucial. The first shark encounter happened just as Sarah had managed to inflate her life raft and climb aboard. A shadow loomed beneath her, and a dorsal fin broke the surface water. Sarah remembered her survival training. No sudden movements, maintaining eye contact, and using whatever was at hand to fend off an attack. She grabbed the flare gun from the emergency kit and prepared to defend herself. As the shark circled closer, drawn by the commotion of her landing, Sarah aimed the flare gun and fired it into the water, hoping the noise and light would deter the shark. The strategy worked momentarily, but Sarah knew that more sharks might be attracted by the signal or the blood from the cuts she had sustained during her ejection. The night began to fall, and Sarah prepared for the worst. She fashioned makeshift weapons and tools using the raft's emergency supplies to protect herself. She stayed vigilant, using her jacket to cover her wounds and minimize the scent of blood in the water. The actual test of Sarah's resolve came when not one but two sharks approached her raft under the cover of darkness. The glow of her emergency beacon reflected off their circling forms, a haunting reminder of the thin barrier between her and the predators. The sharks grew bolder with each pass, bumping against the raft and testing its integrity. Sarah faced the sharks with a bravery that belied her fear. Using a paddle to keep them at bay, she managed to fend off their advances. each stroke a testament to her determination to survive. This battle of wills lasted throughout the night, and Sarah used every trick and technique at her disposal to ensure her safety. As dawn broke, the sharks, perhaps losing interest or driven away by the light, disappeared into the depths of the Sargasso Sea. Sarah, exhausted but alive, was finally spotted by a rescue helicopter. Her ordeal was over, but the story of her survival, her courage in the face of danger, and her application of her naval training in the most extreme circumstances would become the stuff of legend within the Navy. Sarah Jensen's experience in the shark-infested waters of the North Atlantic not only tested her physical limits, but also taught her invaluable lessons about leadership, perseverance, and nature's unpredictability. These lessons would shape her future and inspire countless others within and beyond the Navy. In the aftermath of her rescue, Sarah's life took on a new trajectory. She was hailed as a hero, a title she accepted with humility. The Navy celebrated her survival techniques, her leadership under pressure, and her unwavering spirit of perseverance. Sarah's ordeal became a case study in survival training programs, teaching future pilots and sailors about the unpredictability of nature and the importance of preparedness. But for Sarah, the encounter with the sharks in the Sargasso Sea was more than a survival story. It was a profound learning experience that reshaped her understanding of the natural world and her place within it. She advocated for marine conservation, using her newfound fame to highlight the importance of protecting the ocean's inhabitants, including the sharks that had once threatened her life. Her message was clear. Humans and nature must coexist with respect and understanding for the delicate balance that sustains life on this planet. Sarah worked with conservation groups, participated in educational campaigns, and spoke at conferences about the need for marine conservation efforts, drawing on her personal story to inspire action. Moreover, Sarah's daring escape and the lessons learned in those harrowing hours in the North Atlantic waters solidified her leadership within the Navy. She was often invited to share her experience with young cadets, teaching them about survival and the qualities that define authentic leadership: courage, decisiveness, and the ability to remain calm despite overwhelming odds. Sarah's journey from a Navy pilot to a legend and an inspiration wasn't without its challenges. She battled the physical and emotional scars left by her ordeal. But in doing so, she discovered a more profound sense of purpose. Her story encouraged many, both within the Navy and in the broader world, to face their fears, step out of their comfort zones, and embrace the lessons that come with confronting the unpredictable forces of nature. Years passed, and Sarah Jensen's legacy within the Navy and beyond grew. She wasn't just remembered as the pilot who survived a shark attack. She was celebrated as a leader who transformed her experience into a beacon of hope, resilience, and advocacy for the natural world. Sarah's daring escape in the Sargasso Sea became a legend, a testament to the human spirit's ability to overcome, learn, and inspire.